with this one.
Hello and welcome to Incognito TV. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We've got a couple more days before we got to think about changing those numbers at the end of our date strings to 2015. That's an amazing thing. 2014 has been a wonderful year, and I'll try to save all of my reminiscing until we're a little closer to that wonderful time when we switch those numbers and talk about things to come and our ambitions and dreams and goals. But for today, we're going to be diving into episode 6 of Cheap Love. And where did we leave off with Leah's seduction? Well, we just dove into chapter 2 last week, and we got to see some of the reactions that Gianni Rinaldi had toward Leah. And granted, this was all in his mind, right? It was one of those sections where it's just talking thoughts. And what we've come to understand is that Gianni knows a little bit of something about Leah, and was a bit surprised by her appearance. So clearly didn't know her in real life, but possibly through the business. And boy, those thoughts came off as really shallow and scathing. He thought she was very plain looking and was very critical of her choice of dress. This is set in New York, and I don't know if it's New York, but I would assume so, in the fashion industry. Okay, so clearly Gianni's got some priorities, and clearly Leah has some priorities, which seem to be focused around work and getting the job done rather than, living up to appearances or going after those relationships of the romantic nature. So it makes you wonder, right? Is Leah still going to be long for love? Well, I hope not. I hope not. I mean, if that's what she wants anyway, I hope not. So we're going to be picking up there to set the mood before we dive into step 5 of the staircase and creating a build order. We're going to do some experimentation there. We're going to take a look at our step 3, step 4 build order and see if we can't come up with something a little different, making use of a little more tech while still maintaining that early pressure, right? Because that's one of the things I love about the staircase method, is that it really drives home the point of aggression, frequent attacks, and using what you've got when you've got it. Alright, so let's not delay any further. Let's see what's happening with Leah and Gianni. So we're going to start off here and continue Gianni's thoughts on Leah. Though he had to admit some models he knew would envy her lips. They were full and wide, the type that required collagen injections for the average woman. But he suspected hers were natural. Her complexion, unadorned by foundation or powder, was clear. One good feature, at least. When she had looked at him with those huge brown eyes, Gianni had reacted. That annoyed him. He had more control than that, yet he had been hard for her before he had turned to walk away. Oh boy, it was difficult to fathom. At the root of it was the question whether it could be the same Leah Ivers. The name was common enough, and in a city densely populated as New York, there had to be many women with that name. Then why did it bother him so much? His misdeed was at the heart of it. Finding the leather journal had been a fluke. Gianni wasn't interested in anyone else's private affairs, and he had been just about to give it to the coffee shop clerk when he happened to flip it open. A rapid scan over the words written there had made him freeze. The words radiated off the page and spoke to him. Although he knew they were written by a woman that had never intended for them to be shared. Okay, we're going to leave off there. And, I mean, Gianni definitely had a reaction despite his mind saying that she wasn't that attractive, given that he was hard for her by the time he was done saying hello. Oh my, oh my, oh my, as they say. And, you know, I detect a sense of creeperism here as well. You know, reading somebody's private journal. I mean, granted, he found it in a public place. Probably, you know, trying to figure out who owned it. All that sort of stuff. But, you know, he's saying he realized it was private, and then he kept on reading it. And instead of giving it to the coffee shop clerk, again, he kept on reading it. Seems a little creepy to me. A little invasive. But then again, you got to think about who we're talking about. We'll see. Maybe he's a great man. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. All we know is what we've been told. So we'll find out. So today, as I'm starting up StarCraft, we're going to be looking at how to make something that looks pretty bad in the scope of things. How we're going to make it better. How we're going to doll it up and give it a little blush, some mascara. And what we're talking about is build orders for the use in the staircase method. Alright, so the staircase method gives you constraints as you work through each step, and you increase your basic skills in macro and mechanics. It introduces new complexity, which allows us to be more creative and gives us more decisions to make. So once we introduced gas, which was at step 3, we started to think about, well, how are we going to utilize that gas? So we put together a build order, which I've got on my handy dandy notebook here. We went through a couple of iterations, found something that worked, that we liked, given our preferences, our play style, if we have one, which is in debate at the moment. And then as we moved on to step 4, we made some additions, and in step 5, we basically went into it leaving it the same. But today I want to think about how we can tweak the build a little bit to make a little more aggression that is centered around some tech, right? Because in step 4, we're waiting until like after 10 minutes to get things like stim. And what that's saying is that we're focusing on unit production first, unit production and expanding our economy. Like, those are the two priorities in the first 10 minutes of the game. And then we're really getting into the stim and the combat shields. We're also getting early upgrades from the engineering bay, and sometimes we're getting those quite early, which is nice. So there's some upgrade tech in there, but maybe we want to get to medevacs a little faster, because right now medevacs are the last thing that are coming out of our build. Maybe we want to get stim faster, and that's why we want those medevacs sooner. And this is all going to sound a whole lot more like a standard fast expand build in a lot of ways, minus the Reaper, because we can only have 2 battle units outside of the given units. So what can we do? And first we need to pick an objective, like an endpoint, where we want to be, when-ish, and then see how we can structure our build to get there. And I'm doing this little thing with my hands today. I don't know what's up with that, but that's what we're doing. All right, so what are my thoughts? What are my thoughts? All right, I like the early unit production. I like the focus on that. And I think what I want to do is try something that involves getting 3 barracks up pretty quick, getting units out of them, and then using the follow-up barracks, the 4th and the 5th, as our immediate placement for for STIM, and that's going to push STIM, if I'm guessing, I'm going to say it's going to push it into a more standard timing. Alright, so we're still not getting our medevacs much quicker with this, and we're still relying quite heavily on those 3 barracks to pump out units, so that's one way we could go. The other way would be to get 3 barracks, a factory, and a starport, and then add 2 more barracks on. That sounds incredibly familiar to a lot of Terrans. We could do that. Given how much I like early unit production, this is a really tough decision. So, let's see. We got to make a choice. We have to make a choice. We'll try... Yeah, we're going to try the 3 barracks and then add 2 more, a factory, armory, starport, like we've been doing, except those 2 new barracks aren't going to be used to produce units. They're going to be used to produce a tech lab and a reactor. And we're going to see if that fits. So, first, let's get a rough build order written down here so that we can have something to guide us along our journey. And then we're going to test it out against AI to see if things are lining up, and then, you know, maybe take some notes on how we can make them line up better. So what's this going to look like? It's going to look like a supply depot at 10 and a barracks at 12 and orbital at 15-ish. I really would like to see if I can optimize that a little better too, because right now there's a little delay between the barracks and the 15th supply being put out. Alright, and then at 400 minerals, we're going to go for a command center. And then we're going to get our second barracks, and I'm basically going to stay at 150 minerals, although there's a little bit more to that. And then at 75, our first refinery. And let's see, where are we going here? Third barracks, third racks, and then engineering bay. NG Bay, got it, alright. Now, and then +1 as soon as it finishes, okay. So after the engineering bay is going to be factory. And now here's where the questions are going to start to come up as far as when to spend the gas. I feel like we're going to be a little delayed on our engineering bay upgrades, especially 2-2, but we'll see. So the question is do we take our armory next, or do we start getting those... well, actually we messed up. Wait a minute. We're not getting a factory just yet. We're going to go for a fourth and a fifth barracks. Fourth racks, fifth racks, and a tech lab, and a reactor when they're done. And then factory, armory, starport, and somewhere in there is the third refinery. Let's say between the armory and the starport or something like that. We'll try it out and we'll see where it goes. And what we're looking for is when are we researching STIM and combat shields. And we're going to see if things are lining up pretty well, or if we can make some modifications to get them to line up pretty well. The other option is we could go take a look at a standard build and just do that. But this is a lot more interesting from the point of view of trying to understand the economy behind playing a game of StarCraft and behind the whys of a build order, right? That's really what I'm getting at here, is that if we're going to think about build orders at all at this level of play, all right, and I'm like in the top 8 or whatever of gold at the moment, like I don't really think there's a whole lot of immediate value in talking about build orders at this level. And we can talk about that in the future. And as a matter of fact, this week I'm going to put together a video, standalone, not on stream, just making some statements about how we're approaching new players with information. New players and underdeveloped players. Alright, so stay tuned for that, because it is going to be amazing, and I hope that we can start some discussion around it in the community. But right now, I'm going through this exercise for future benefit, not for immediate benefit. If I wanted immediate benefit in my analysis, I would be practicing my macro right now and getting on the ladder and doing step 5 of the staircase as best as I could without really thinking about the build order. But I'm concerned about the future more so than I am about my immediate efficacy, to bust out a word. So that's what we're going to do, and always think about when you're practicing a thing or learning a thing or reading an article or watching a tutorial or listening to analysis, try to think about why are these things good? Why is scouting good? Why is this build order good, quote unquote, which is a really terrible way to describe a build order. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And right now what we're trying to accomplish is understanding the economy. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to do our macro practice, should we have enough time. And we're about, you know, I've noticed a trend. I talk for about 17 minutes at the beginning of every stream. It's pretty much spot on every time. I don't know what that says about me, but we'll figure it out. Alright, so we're going to go in and pull up a very standard map here, overgrowth, and we're going to load up against the easy AI, and we're going to try this slight modification to our build. We might mess it up a few times, so we might have to quit out, because what we want to do is sort of set a standard for ourselves of how this build is sort of going to operate under ideal circumstances. And so we're trying to create those ideal circumstances. Part of that is execution, and so we might have to stop, restart, because we want the data, we want the timings of things, and we want to know if there are big gaps, and we can't know that if we're not executing. Alright, so anytime you're practicing a build order, getting it right at least once is incredibly important if you're trying to do any kind of analysis. And I can guarantee you that my execution is going to be a little bit off, because this is the first time that I'm doing this, and that's cool with me. This is the way to learn, at least for me, is to get in there, experience it, and figure out how it works. Alright, and I encourage you all to do the same. And even if you're great at learning from other people or from reading, take that thing and try to dissect it yourself. Try to deconstruct it, try to figure out why everything is the way it is, rather than just doing it and then wondering why you can't win games when you've got such a good build order that you're executing so well, or when your micro is so phenomenal but some scrub just out macros you, like me. These things happen. I had a player that was quite confused by how I was able to defeat them, because I wasn't even that good. And that's the truth, but not for long. Taking a very directed approach to our practice. Our improvement has been accelerating, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. And I keep saying the plural here because there's more than just me behind this stream. And
additional supply time.
And I like to at least recognize that fact in an abstract and obtuse way when possible.
Not enough minerals.
Alright, so there's our barracks at 12, and we're going to get our orbital command around 15. And then our command center, when we have 400 minerals to do so, we're going to do constant SCV production as much as possible and constant marine production as much as possible, but we're likely going to cut that right when we're floating so that we can float some minerals to 400 and get our second base. Alright, so here's this little spot that's a little rough. The SCV in production is going to finish, but the barracks isn't quite done yet, and I don't think it's enough time to make another SCV. So we're just going to sit on it, morph it in, wall it off, get a marine, and then we're going to wait for our mule. One marine or two marines is a decision you can make in the game depending on how you perceive the match to be playing out.
Upgrade complete.
There it is. We're going to drop our mule and get our next SCV and our next marine. So even if you want two marines, the delay is not too bad. It's alright. Alright, so we're going to get our second barracks.
Not enough minerals.
As soon as we have everything up in production here, we got a marine. We got two SCVs queued up. Here we go. Second barracks.
Not enough minerals.
First refinery.
Not enough minerals.
Alright, and now what we want is a supply depot. So we're going to have to hang out for a second. There we go. Keep the SCV production up and prioritized. Always check those minerals. There's a marine. Now let's saturate our gas and get our third barracks. Our engineering bay.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals.
There we go. Constant production. Drop the mules on cooldown. Alright. So, as soon as we can, we're going to convert this to an orbital. Which is now. Get that on a control group. That's cool. And get our +1.
Not enough minerals.
SCV production, of course. And marine production, of course. Alright, what's next is our fourth and our fifth barracks. And taking our second base. Alright, so right about now, fourth barracks. And let's take our second. Cool. SCV production, marine production. Reset our camera for our rally point. And more. We're going to save the mules for the landing. Alright. Fifth barracks. When these two are done, we are going to put a tech lab and a reactor on them. Alright, there we go. Let's see, where are we at with gas? We've got 172. So, once we have
additional supply depots
math.
required.
Oh, messing up on that. Cool. There we go. We got one done. We're going to put a tech lab on that one. We're going to get our factory. There it is.
Additional supply depots required.
We're going to drop some mules over here and make sure that we're actually rallying correctly, because that's silly. Alright, we're floating some minerals in the process here. We're going to get our reactor. As soon as we clear that out, there we go. Start our stem. And we've got lots of minerals not getting spent while we're trying to do this.
Additional supply depots
So that's something we need to think about. We seem to be waiting on our gas. Because we never took our second refinery. Okay, that's why. Seem to be waiting on gas, which means we can't spend our minerals any faster. I mean, we're producing marines and we're producing SCVs, and that's really our only mineral dump. So without adding on more barracks, we wouldn't be able to spend those minerals. But that all comes down to missing our second refinery, which was in the first build, that was happening when we took our second engineering bay. And that wasn't happening until, let's see, let's take a look. I believe it was after the armory. Yeah, it was after the armory. So, given that we need some gas for these tech labs, we're going to have to take our refinery a bit sooner. And it seems to be about the time it takes to build a refinery, another barracks, and then an engineering bay, whatever that time is about what we need for 100 gas. Alright, so maybe when we take our engineering bay the first time, we're going to get our second refinery. Let's try that. Because what we're doing right now isn't working out at all in terms of being able to spend. And spending is the name of the macro game. So let's give that a go. Second refinery, as soon as we've got 75 minerals after starting the engineering bay. So we should be able to spend that gas very, very quickly, and therefore be able to spend our minerals also. We should be able to speed up the build. Alright, let's go. Decided to go with the shaved face. It's been a while, so it's a little unusual for me. I keep going to stroke my beard thusly, and it is not there. Get our cameras set, do all the sort of stuff that we normally would do. And we're going to go ahead and give our second iteration a try, see if it gets us closer to what we're aiming for. And if we're unable to do this in a relatively quick amount of time, come to something that works for us, then what we're going to do is look at some standard builds and find one that seems to match our objectives most closely, and then see if we can't
Not enough minerals.
see if we can't make little modifications or tweaks to make it more up our alley. And what I'm thinking about immediately here is Hearts 3 Barracks stim timing. I don't know if you guys remember that build. That sounds about like what I'm trying to accomplish. So we'll see.
Not enough minerals.
But again, we're going through this exercise so that we can understand the relationships in this game between timing and economy and production. And this is a learning exercise, right? This isn't necessarily practice, but learning. And anytime you're trying to maximize your skill or maximize your progress in learning a thing, you've got to take the time for the learning just as much as the practice, just as much as the performance. I've been reading about melodic improvisation, for example, on the piano. I'm not much of a piano player. But I do play, and it's also applicable to the other instruments that I'm more adept at. And that's purely an intellectual exercise, not so much about practice or technique or skill development, but it's knowledge development.
What's going on?
Alright, so now we're going to be taking our second command center.
Big job, huh?
As soon as we've got the minerals for it, which is very shortly.
Upgrade.
Right now, there we go. Drop our mule. Cool. Keep marine and SCV production flowing. That's the idea. Even prioritizing them a little bit more than it would be optimal, because at this phase we are trying to make the most of what skills we do have, and not distracting ourselves with stuff
Not enough minerals.
isn't going to be as useful to us right now. with the exception of this learning, which is future-oriented. Alright, so we're going to take our second gas when we take our refinery, or shortly thereafter. Alright, and here we go is third barracks.
SCV ready.
Cool, and supply depot.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals.
Awesome.
SCV ready.
Mule drop.
Gangway. Coming.
And engineering bay. And refinery. And that puts us a little bit behind on our orbital on our second here. Alright, so that's something to be aware of.
Armed and ready.
Alright, we also want to make sure that... Yep, there we go. Cool, and now we're going to get this new gas fully saturated. Add on our fourth barracks.
Not enough
And
minerals.
get our first upgrade.
Not
keep-
enough minerals.
Keep the marine production up
Not enough minerals.
as much as possible.
Not enough minerals. Upgrade complete.
There we go. Now let's go ahead and take our second base.
You gonna give me orders?
Reset our rallies.
Armed and
Okay, we've got lots of
ready. Want a piece of me, boy?
gas just banking on up. So let's get ourselves our fifth barracks.
What's going on?
Our
SCV
factory.
ready.
Not enough minerals.
And let's drop mules on our fresh
Not enough
expansion.
energy.
Keep up the SCV production.
SCV ready.
And now we're going to rally everything out this way.
Not enough minerals.
Alright, so when these barracks are done,
Go, go.
Alright, we got
SCV ready.
enough for the tech lab,
SCV ready.
the reactor,
Not enough minerals.
and we've got a factory on the way.
Gangway. Coming through.
And we're spending our minerals a lot better, but we're banking lots of gas.
SCV ready.
Alright,
Add-on complete.
cool.
This better be good.
Alright, so here we go. We get a reactor on there,
Additional supply.
starport there,
So,
and our armory.
yeah.
Now we're chewing through the gas, and we should have enough to start our
Add-on complete.
defense upgrades
SCV
Additional supply depots required.
when they're done. We also
Additional
need to
supply
think about
depots
staying on
required.
top of our supply, as always. Alright, so we've got about that many Marines, 14 for an attack right about now. That's
Upgrade
good.
complete.
That lines up with what I'm trying to accomplish. Cool.
Add-on
The gas spending was pretty good, I feel like. I feel like this can work. It's a little rough, but I feel like it can work, and we're getting our continuous upgrades and all of that fun stuff, and now we've got plenty of gas to spew at medevac production,
That's new gas.
and now we can get down more barracks, that sort of thing.
Additional supply depots.
Alright.
Not
Cool.
enough minerals.
So I think that's good enough to put into practice and to see how it plays. There's some roughness in the execution, right? Like when that fourth barracks comes down, let's work this out a little bit. When the fourth barracks is finished, let's get the tech lab and start STEM. And the factory, we're going to immediately put a reactor on so we can swap our starport onto it. We've got enough gas income to do all of that. Taking our second gas right after we take our first engineering bay. The gas will bank up, so there's probably some opportunity to do a little micro on the worker line there. Maybe not 3 SCVs in there initially, maybe just 2, and then put a third in at some point that is undefined. We've got a pretty decent attack that we can do between 7.5 and 8 minutes. With like 10 Marines or so. So there's some things working out there, but it still feels a little rough around the edges. So let's take a moment and rewrite that out to be just a little bit more precise. A little bit more precise. And I tend to write my build orders out in terms of when structures finish or when I have a certain amount of resources. That makes a whole lot more sense to me than basing everything off of supply. Things can happen in a game that will deviate when you hit a certain supply, right? So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me for builds to be so locked into the supply count. Early on it makes some sense, and if you're not harassed or you don't make any execution mistakes regarding your build, then you can get pretty deep just basing it off supply. But at some point the other player is going to start playing the game and things could change. Alright, so let's talk this through as I stare at my notebook and write. 10 supply is our depot. 12 is our barracks. And 15 is our orbital. 400 minerals is our second CC. And then we're going to go second barracks. Alright. And first refinery. And then somewhere in here is orbital command. And I've been taking it after the engineering bay, which is a little bit of a delay and a little bit rough. But let's go ahead and stick with that for now. We can try to clean it up after we play the build a bit. So we're going to go third racks. And then at 125 minerals, we're going to get engineering bay. NG bay, yay! And in that particular round, I believe I got the second refinery before the orbital command. We're going to do that again. I think I can switch up the ordering a little bit there and not lose a whole lot and actually gain something. So we're going to leave things as they are, experiment, play the build on the ladder, see how it goes, and see where the problems are. Alright, so engineering bay, and then second refinery. Cool. And second orbital at 150 minerals, and then we're going to go fourth rack, or yeah, fourth racks, and fifth racks, and then at 100% fourth tech lab, and at 100% fifth reactor. Let's see here, and then we're going to go at 100 gas factory, and then at 100 gas stem, and at 100% factory we'll get reactor on the factory and armory, and then second engineering bay. Oh, I forgot the starport. So let's correct that. We're going to go 100% factory into reactor, into starport, and then into armory. And all of that might happen around about the same time anyway, as it seemed to have in that particular test run. And then we're going to get our second engineering bay and our third refinery. And throughout this we're going to expand per the directives of the staircase, and this build is a lot more complicated than the previous two, as is what happens as you go through the staircase method. And like I was starting to say, we're going to expand per the directives of the staircase, which is to say when we're approaching optimal mineral saturation on a base, we're going to start building our next command center. So we're not expanding for strategic reasons, we're purely expanding for economic reasons, right? So in a game of StarCraft, you might decide, for example, that I'm not going to expand, I'm not going to build any more SCVs, I'm going to put all of my excess income above my current level of production into more production, and you might be trying to defeat your opponent before they can move on to the next tier of their tech, or before they can take another expansion themselves. So we're not taking strategic consideration into this. This is all about just practicing solid macro habits, and we're going through the learning exercise of creating build orders around the constraints within each step, and we're at step 5, which means a lot of constraints are gone, but they're still there. For example, I can only build 2 units from the battle units category within the method, and my selection has generally been medevacs and marauders, in addition to the given units, which are marines and hellions / hellbats and SCVs. So we're going to give this build a try, and we're going to fall down on it probably. We're going to make some mistakes, we're going to drop the ball, and we're just going to try to be able to execute this build under the pressure of a ladder game. And then we're going to see, you know, once we get that build order executed smoothly, we're going to see where we can make some tweaks to optimize it. For example, I'm really not comfortable with the little delay in getting the orbital command on my second base, because I don't like landing command centers without there being an orbital on it. It tends to slow down the saturation speed of that base, and it seems too slow for my taste, right? I'd rather be able to put it down and be ready to get the most out of it I possibly can. But we'll see. That might be an error. We'll find out. We'll try to get some data. Alright, so let's get out of here, and let's go over to the ladder, and we're going to try to execute this build. The big changes from our previous builds are taking our second refinery when we take our engineering bay, getting a tech lab on the 4th barracks when it completes, getting a reactor on the 5th barracks when it completes, and getting STEM as soon as we can afford it. Alright, so we're also going to be taking a factory and a starport after all of that, and an armory. And we're going to try to keep our upgrade production very, very timely. Alright, so I feel like there's some competing priorities in this build, which means it's not yet optimized. But that's cool. That's the process. And I'm not afraid to take it to the ladder, and I'm not afraid to have it get beaten, because that's how you learn, and you can only do that when you're open to looking at what you've done critically and taking yourself out of the equation. Taking your ego out of the equation. Alright, so let's go. Let's give this a shot. Currently rank 6 in gold, yay. And we might lose a little bit of that in the process of learning stuff, and that's just fine. That's okay, because we can make it up. I know that we can. We've done it before. Let's go. Still trying to hit my goal of platinum by the end of the season. I believe that we're in reach of that. And after we're done here with this, we'll probably spend some time just laddering. Maybe doing a little bit of our step 5. Playing it by ear a little more or less. I've got a lot of things going on though, so I've got to be prudent about my time spent. We'll see. Alright, let's see. Are we comfortable? Let's wiggle around a little bit. Here we go. We got a TVT, so this build is going to be pretty vulnerable to lots of the tech openings that our Terran opponents like to use, but that's okay. I'm not trying to play necessarily for the immediate win. I'm trying to play for knowledge and information and learning.
SCV ready.
Alright. So what are some of the things that I'm going to be vulnerable to is mostly early tank play. I should be able to handle Banshees very effectively, or at least moderately effectively, because I'm getting a rather quick engineering bay, so I can have turrets down pretty quickly if I decide that I need them.
SCV ready.
Also, I'm going to have a pretty substantial number of Marines, so Marines tend to shoot down things in the air pretty well. Again, not too concerned about the Banshee opener or the Reaper opener, but anything with an early tank is going to be pretty difficult. Unless, of course, my opponent takes another tact and leaves the opportunity for me to come in here and get work done open.
Not enough minerals.
Alright.
Yes, sir.
Not enough minerals.
SCV ready.
And the thing is that if we were to play this out like a real game, what we're banking on is our ability to get so far ahead in economy, given that our opponent has opened hard into tech, that we could eventually catch up in enough tech to put them down.
Ready.
Which is really difficult to do when you can't build siege tanks.
SCV ready.
Because that's where we're at. Alright, so we're going to get our orbital command now. There it is. Wall off. We're going to send our SCV that away. Build a Marine, which I feel is necessary for warding off any mass Reaper kinds of plays, or even a 2 racks fast expand sort of play.
Huh?
Upgrade complete. Not enough minerals.
Drop our Mule, get our next SCV, get
Not
our
enough
next
minerals.
Marine.
This better be good.
Alright. There we go.
SCV
Making
ready.
it happen. So we're going to be taking our second barracks when we can, which is actually right about now.
Hear me. SCV ready.
And our
Go ahead.
first refinery.
Coming through. Who wants some?
And we're going to patrol this Marine on over there.
Here with me. SCV ready.
Lay down a depot. Keep our production up.
Oh,
Alright, so
big job.
we're going to get our third barracks now.
It's your dime.
Load up our refinery. There it is.
SCV ready.
Get our engineering bay. And our second gas. Drop our mule. Keep
Not
up our
enough
production.
minerals.
SCV ready.
So again, now we're sort of sitting in that spot where we can't afford our orbital quite as quickly as we would
Not
like.
enough minerals. Not enough minerals.
Alright, so we've got 3 barracks.
Not enough minerals. Not enough minerals. Not enough
Let's
minerals.
load up our refinery. Cool. And get our 4th barracks.
Not enough
And our
minerals.
+1 attack now that our engineering bay is done.
Upgrade complete.
Want a piece of me, boy?
Alright.
Go ahead.
Something got blown up. Alright, here we go. 4th barracks is still building. Keep up the production of the units. Slacking off a little bit on that front. And
Huh? SCV.
let's go ahead and get our 5th.
Sure thing.
Not enough minerals.
And take our 2nd base.
Gangway. Coming. SCV ready.
Keep up the
Not
marine
enough
production. We're banking up the gas pretty hard.
Not enough minerals.
And let's go ahead and get our first tech lab. Drop the mules on the
Not
fresh
enough
expansion.
This better be
Not
good.
enough
SCV ready.
Cool. And make sure it's in a control group. That would be awesome.
We could use some help here.
So Marines are a poking.
Add-on complete.
We're gonna go ahead and get that stem.
SCV ready.
And a reactor. Except, you know what? We were supposed to build a factory,
SCV ready.
so we're gonna do that. Keep up that marine production, keep up the supply depots.
We could use some help here.
Oh, those Hellions, though.
Ready.
Those Hellions, though.
Go, go, go.
Alright.
Base is under attack.
SCV ready.
And our starport
What's going on?
Upgrade.
when the factory is
Add-on
done.
complete.
Armed and ready.
Cool. So we're totally not optimized in any way to deal with the threat that we are facing right now. And that is well understood.
Bad news.
And here we go with our armory.
Yeah.
Not enough base is under attack. Not enough minerals.
This better be good.
Cool.
SCV ready. By the numbers, boys. You want a piece of me, boy?
Oh, that's a bit much.
Go, go. Been waiting on you.
Don't know how I'm going to deal with that, but that's alright. Let's land this orbital so that we can at least get our mules dropping.
You want a piece of me, boy?
Cool. And our second engineering bay.
Go, go, go.
Let's build. Let's build. There we go. Awesome.
Research complete.
When we get our medevacs out, we're going to be able to get some work done a little easier than before.
This better be good.
Tech should help us out.
Want some?
We're clearly oversaturated, but that's alright.
Not enough minerals.
Get our combat shields,
Not enough
make our
minerals.
Marines a little more
Additional-
buff.
Not enough minerals.
Oh,
Not enough additional.
Ready for dust-off.
Not enough minerals.
okay, here we go.
Been waiting on you.
We've got some kind of army.
Add-on.
We're going to make it happen.
Want some? By the numbers.
Alright, stem finishing was a boon to us, at least for the moment.
SCV ready.
We're going to get some Hellions out, or some Hellbats rather. Cool. Alright.
Bad news. In the rear. You want a piece of
That
me,
doesn't mean
boy?
things are going well just yet,
Want some?
as we've got lots of we don't have any idea what our opponent's been up to. And
Additional
what we
supply
do want to do,
depots
though,
required.
is spend our
Not
gas.
enough minerals.
Go, go, go.
There we
SCV
go.
ready.
And get our next
Not
wave
enough
of upgrades when we can.
SCV ready.
And we're going to transfer our
Research.
oversaturated workers on over here. Alright, make sure everything's going this way.
Coming through.
Not enough minerals.
Cool.
Been waiting on you.
Don't even know where my opponent is located. We didn't do any kind of scouting or anything like that, so we're just going to get out onto the map and be
Not
aggressive.
enough minerals. Mineral field depleted.
Alright, so what do we want
Additional
here?
supply depots required.
SCV ready.
Well, we want to figure out where our opponent's at, so we're going to send off some Marines to scout.
Want some?
Additional supply depots required.
And we're going to try to stay on top of our macro that we've fallen behind on quite a bit, and get some
Additional
more
supply depots
medevacs.
required. Not enough minerals.
Alright,
Not enough minerals.
cool. Next set of upgrades are coming in, and we should probably be thinking about things
I
like...
hear you. We could use some help here.
Alright, cool.
Add-on. Additional
How about a
supply
third
depots
base?
required.
That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Move it. What's going on?
still behind on supply. Let's help ourselves out and get ourselves a little bit ahead.
Additional supply depots.
We're going to be mined out here pretty soon.
Additional supply. Not enough minerals.
So we want to be able to...
Additional supply depots.
Hold on. Let's poke up here. See if they've got themselves a third base or not.
Energy. Mineral field depleted.
Not there. Alright, cool. You, Marine, you're going to go up here. I want to see what we're up against.
Mineral field depleted.
We're going to get ourselves some blue flame.
Help here.
Well, didn't see much.
Give me orders.
Let's find out.
Coming through. Who wants some? Hell that. Come through. TV ready.
Alright, a little bit of a bad trade. These things, they happen, but we've got more army behind it, so we're going to go ahead and throw it on out to the wolves. Get our upgrades. Check out our spending. Where are we at with this third base? It's almost ready to be in orbital. He scans it. He knows what's coming. That's cool. Alright.
Been waiting on you. Outstanding. Hellbat coming through.
Alright, let's wait for the rest of my army to show up.
Ready for dust off.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hellbat.
Upgrade complete.
And try to take care of our macro.
Upgrade complete.
Got any extra
Mineral field
firepower?
depleted. Research complete.
And while he's off doing that, I'm going to go hit him.
Not enough minerals.
Alright.
It's heating up out here. Armed and ready.
So,
Not enough minerals. Mineral field depleted. Mineral field depleted. Mineral field depleted.
we've got things going on. Things are looking pretty good.
By the number. Hellbat coming through.
There we go. Victory. Whew. Yay. Loving it. Loving it. Glad that worked out. Glad there weren't any tanks on the map. And I'll take those 22 points. Feeling alright about it. Okay. So what are some things in that build that I felt were a little bit wonky? There's a lot of banking of that gas, but then we spend it all, which is what I would say not optimal, because then, you know, we could try to rearrange our gas and our minerals to be a little bit more balanced. Not sure quite how to get there, but I'll be thinking about that today. Let's see, is there anything else that was interesting? Let's take a look at how far does this track in. I'd really like to see this laid out against like resources available. That'd be pretty cool. Like your bank and your income. That'd be cool to see. Okay. What I'm trying to see here is barracks, refinery. So the first refinery is at like 21 supply. Huh. Okay. And the second at 23. Interesting. We're starting +1 weapons at 545. I feel like that's nice and early. So that's something to think about exploiting. Right? We're starting it there. We'd want to see, I forget what the exact timing is on that, but we want to make sure that we're attacking when that's finished. I don't think we did any of that because we were so focused on trying to execute our little build. And again, it was a little rough, and I think that has to do a lot with practice, but it accomplished most of what we were trying to accomplish, was having stim at somewhat reasonable time. Which, yeah, that's basically, we're starting it at a very standard time now. When we're not getting it fast, right? So, like, timing it for a 10-minute attack, like, this will work out pretty well for that, as was evidenced by the stim attack that I did. But we want it to attack sooner, so we want to pay attention to when this finishes, and I think that's when we're going to do our first real attack. Yeah. Alright, so we've been live for an hour, and that is the scheduled stream. We were hanging out with Leah and Gianni and Leah's seduction and getting some insight into the man known as Gianni Rinaldi. And he's very easily stimulated, as we learned. So, at any rate, I think we've got ourselves the makings of a build for Step 5. And we'll see how that plays. I got to get some work done this afternoon, and then I think I'll be back on a little bit later to do some more streaming and see if we can't bump our way into Platinum here. We're sitting on rank 4 gold. It shouldn't be too far off, but that is more of a matter of our MMR than anything else, so we'll see. Our opponent was labeled as an even match. Whatever that means. Whatever that means. Yeah, I made more units. Anyway, guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you're not working too hard. And be safe throughout this holiday season, please. Because I love you all so very much. You're beautiful. And good afternoon.